Hi students, Professor Laney here. Today, or this week, we are doing one of my favorites, and I guess I say that about all of the chapters, but this is autism spectrum disorders. And so I know a lot of people take the class for this specific chapter. They're most curious about that, this particular set of issues. It's a little bit newer, and because the prevalence has come up really, really fast, and people have a lot of questions, and even the media has it wrong. A lot of teachers don't really know 100% what it is. And it is one of those things that shows up in every culture. Doesn't matter how much money you have or how much money you don't have, where you live, it shows up everywhere. And it has a very unique set of characteristics and challenges that come with it. So let's get to it. Okay, so again, we are in Unit 3, and we did ADHD and emotional behavior disorders, and now onto autism spectrum disorders. And the reason why, again, why I went out of order with these chapters is that, to me, these four kind of go together. You're going to see a lot of overlapping here between EBD, ADHD, ASD, and then next week we're going to talk about gifted. So sometimes your student will have all of these things at the same time. It's very possible to have all of those things. So again, I clustered them together because they tend to cluster together. Good? Okay. I do want to let you know that this chapter is going to be rather long. I'm going to let every video play out. Okay. So this recording might be a little bit closer to 2 hours than 1 hour. But this is the reason why I do that, is so you guys can see everything I'm talking about. Now, again, there might be like a TED Talk that's like 12 minutes long, but I might get through the first 5 minutes or so. But I really want to get to a lot of it in here together, if you call this together, to make sure that you guys actually see it. And then, of course, I also listed all those videos under the videos here. I also put them in the chapter outline. Those are all listed there as well. And then you can have access to it also in the regular Prezi, without me talking in the YouTube video, but in the regular Prezi. Okay, so let's get to it. Intro. Children with ASD. Whew, it's not something that can be cured. It's not something that can be fixed. It's something that we need to adapt to. And I mean we, and I mean all of us, again, because if we're all neurodiverse, it's not like there's like normal people and abnormal people. There's just all of us need to learn to live together and help those who have different impairments or different structures in the brain or different ways of behaving, okay? And again, a lot of the examples we'll have today will show or illustrate about how people are different. Okay, and it's not bad, it's not good, it's just different. And again, the adaptation of our society on how we treat these people really tells a lot about us. Okay, again, these challenges can, like every chapter, can be mild or severe. Some students will have a mild form of autism, some will have a very, very severe form of autism. And there are substantial problems in areas related to communication. Some are nonverbal. Some are partially verbal. Some have a specific speech pattern. It's not a speech impediment, although there can be some overlap. It's sometimes the brain has desires to speak but can't get it out. So again, there's a lot of different things going on here. Cognition, a lot of times you can have very high cognition with ASD. Sometimes you can have lower cognition. And then everyday functioning can be very, very challenging. And there's different reasons for that, and we'll go over that as well. Again, it's just not just an American problem, although we have a very high proportion of ASD in this country, and that could be for several reasons, and we'll get to that under prevalence. There's not really a genetic marker, but where I put genetic better, they're getting better in the genetic testing, meaning they're seeing a pattern, but not a genetic marker like you would see in Down syndrome or Fragile X. Okay, a lot better research lately, and community awareness is a lot more open. These are the three main areas, and see how they overlap? Each one overlaps. My favorite part is that some kids are just very hyper introverted, and they don't talk. So you're going to see a lot more of this. Okay, you might have this repetitive behaviors. Okay. And I'll show you examples of all of these things. But if you have somebody who's, like, I would say light or mild would be on the outsides, or maybe one kid is like totally, it looks like a typical kid, but they just don't know how to start conversations. They might be just, out here a little bit, right on the edge. And then some kids have all of these things in a very severe level and they end up being right there. That's the eye of the storm, the trifecta right there. So again, it could be all of those things. It could be one of those things. It could be all of those things severe or profound, or it could be one of those things very mildly. Okay. Autism is a spectrum disorder. No two people with autism are alike, meaning if you say, oh yeah, my cousin's autistic, I know exactly what autism is like. We don't roll off autism like we're stamping out 2016 like Ford Fusions. We're not, though in that industry, everything's supposed to be exactly the same. These are human beings, right? Everybody's different, even if there's siblings who are both autistic, completely different, okay? And we'll learn about a sibling pair, a twin set here in the chapter today, and it's going to have one child who is affected severely and one who's not. It's really interesting. This is an overview here. With her accent, she says stereotypies, and in America we say stereotypy, and we'll learn about what that is. It's repetitive behavior, and so stereotypic behavior, manneristic behavior, stereotypy, all those things mean the same thing. You'll see it later, like it could be this, it could be hand flapping, it could be something in the mouth, it could be anything, right? So I just wanted to clarify that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very good. It's good to hear a doctor use person first language. That is a requirement, right? So I think that's a great place to start. All those little things that she touched on in the chapter, I give you really good examples. So again, it's going to be very, very involved here. Okay. Now, if we really get into the description of the disorders and the definition of what it is, she's already kind of identified. It literally was called childhood schizophrenia. Again, we already learned that schizophrenia is a thought disorder and autism is not a thought disorder. It is a behavioral issue. So again, just know that I personally believe that, the definition will change again And when she said sensory issues, there's also a separate thing called sensory processing disorder. It's not in the DSM. Or executive functioning disorder. That's not in the DSM. So we're going to see a little bit more specific definitions. What you'll see in the medical community is like they'll have a term that's very inclusive. They'll say childhood disintegrative disorder. Well, what does that mean? It means pretty much a catch-all for anything. And then the pendulum will swing back and everything will be very, very specific. It'll be like, no, you have PDD NOS, or you have Rett syndrome, or you have Fragile X, or you have this, or you have that. So then it'll get very specific. Now the pendulum has swung back into a more general place, which is autism spectrum disorders. And that's really, I think it's honest because it is a spectrum, right? There's no one person, and there's this side of ASD, and there's this side of ASD, but I think within the spectrum, it's going to even get more specific. It'll still stay a spectrum, but then it'll get a little bit more specific. And it has some specific issues right now, some specific terms, and we'll learn about those as well. Okay. Again, their educational performance has to be adversely affected. If the kid goes to school and they're like perfect at school, they're not going to help them with an IEP if there's no impairments. If only the impairments are at home, we have other supports there. Okay. Now, again, she talked about deficits in social interaction. Sometimes they don't interact with others. Sometimes they do interact with others, but it's pressured or scripted, like she said. Like somebody told you how to say, hi, my name's Sarah, and that's it. And then you don't really interact with people, right? So you've learned a script, but that doesn't mean that you are really having a conversation, okay? Also, the communication skills and abilities. Some kids have what she said, echolalia. We'll learn about that. It's not Tourette's. Tourette's is a little bit different. And then fixated interests and repetitive behaviors. And again, I have shared with you that we are challenged by this as well in my home. Right now we have a lot of like that, car noises, barking, things like that. So, but for us, it's not 100%. It's an autism feature. It's just not. It's maybe more related to sensory issues. So, again, which came first, sensory issues or autism or sensory issues? So we really don't know. So, again, it's not so much about the diagnosis, but what that child needs from us. Okay. And again, behaviors could be mild, moderate, or profound. Or we say severe or profound means pretty a big deal. It's in every area of life, and usually show up in preschool. And some of the parents will say, "Oh, he was really quirky before. Usually when he was a baby, he was really quirky. He didn't really respond to his name, and he really liked this one toy." I have video examples of all these things, and it really, yeah, you'll see the difference, right? Now, again, autism spectrum disorders are literally, think of a rainbow, like a spectrum of a rainbow. And autism, you'll hear autism or ASD or typical autism, right? And then this is the IDEA definition again. It significantly affects verbal and nonverbal communication. It shows up before 3. Okay, sometimes kids don't speak till they're 3. It shows up at school, and they may have repetitive activities, stereotyped or stereotypy, resistance to change. They're very rigid. If you do things differently than the way they expected, they have a meltdown, and it's not a tantrum. Okay, unusual responses to sensory experiences. So it could be the tag in a shirt. It could be a shirt. It could be all clothes. It could be a blanket, or it has to be a certain blanket, or it has to be food, or not certain food. It gets very, very rigid. Okay, and again, there's a lot more here. So again, think of an actual rainbow. And if you think of high functioning over here, like Asperger's disorder, we'll talk about that in a second. PDD, and that's another term. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That was pervasive developmental delay. That's kind of an older term, and I'll talk to you about it. But right here in the middle, there's the average IQ, just like the rest of us, right? But then maybe there's a little bit of learning issues, a little bit more, okay? So my son's a little bit right in between these two. He's a little bit above average, but not too much above average. But then he has splinter skills, and we'll talk about that too. Sometimes they're very, very good at one thing. I mean, like obsessively or obscenely good at one thing, but like really bad at everything else. So I tell my doctor sometimes, can we trade in some of the IQ points for the behavior points? Can we trade those? No, sorry, can't do that. And Asperger syndrome. This is a little bit, you might have heard this term. It's a syndrome. It just means a collection of characteristics. It's not separate. It's under the spectrum. The spectrum used to not include that, but it does include that now. And it's going to be a child with above average intelligence, but still may have difficulty keeping friendships and things like that. Oh, that was loud. So the old DSM had autism and Asperger's and PDD, and now the new DSM just has autism spectrum disorder. So it's a combination of, it's like they put everything together. Yeah, make sense? Okay. And now here's kind of a side by side, and I like this one too. Um, they're both, you'll see them both here, okay, since birth, but you're going to see like a preoccupation here, and there's a little bit more advancedness in some ways. There could be some severe symptoms, and they could also be mild. They like to stay isolated. These ones like to actually interact with society. And children with autism, there might be a language delay. Okay, but these ones, they have fantastic language, but they just might use it differently. So it's a little interesting, you know, and I have a friend who has a teenager this way, and it's really, really interesting. I do want to show you this one gal right here. She's fantastic. Of course, a TED Talk. You know how I love my TED Talks. It's so profound. At first you feel sad, and then you're like, oh, she threw a joke in there. Hmm. Kind of upsets the teacher a little bit, yeah? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, both of them. It's amazing. That's, oh, that's so sweet. Yeah. So great. So great. Again, yeah, why are we striving to be normal? That makes no sense because again, what is normal? Normal is different for everybody, right? So I just wanted to show you what a person with autism, may or may not look like. Looks like she's got very specific fashion ideas. Fantastic. Who doesn't? We all have specific fashion ideas. She has a specific way she wears her hair and uses body language and talks. Fantastic. I would love to do a TED Talk, right? But maybe I'm spending too much time being normal, right? And I did throw this in there. Always unique, totally interesting, sometimes mysterious autism. And yes, my son qualifies as all of those things. Yeah, right. Yeah, right now because his ADD is so profound, his ADHD is so profound, it kind of shadows this. But when his ADHD is like kind of tempered a little bit, when his meds kick in, the Asperger's shows up. So it's really kind of interesting. Again, and it all has to do with brain chemistry, right? It's just what was in that brain and how does it function? And the core characteristics, are there some similarities? Yes, there's a lot of different similarities, but again, there's those two issues that the new DSM really focuses on, communication and repetitive behaviors. And again, can have a range. Um, there are some red flags, right? I've seen so many parents are like, oh, my baby's like the perfect baby. He's like so quiet. He's like, doesn't even cry. And like, he's like obsessed with my cell phone. It is like the cutest thing. He totally pretends to talk on it. It's like so cute. You're like, okay, let's see how are they acting in the rest of the world, right? So again, schedule changes might agitate them when they repeat words and phrases and they don't really apply to the situation right there. And it's not like say mama and they say mama. That's normal, right? That's typical. It's typically developed. But if they hear SpongeBob say something and then let's say SpongeBob says happy birthday or SpongeBob says to the rescue and they are saying like to the rescue, 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 and you're like, okay, stop saying that. And they're like to the rescue, to the rescue. Trust me, it's a lot when it happens. And they can't really control it, right? Sometimes they can't really understand jokes or puns or sarcasm. They might even come up with a joke to tell you and it's not funny and they think it's hilarious because their imagination or their sense of humor is just a little bit different. Um, Not pointing. To me, under the age of 1, when they're not pointing, that's a big one, right? Because most kids are like, uh. They might, they're trying to say, I want that. Or they go, dat, want dat, If you don't hear any of that, right? You got to really keep up with the well baby checks. I don't care if what medical provider you have. Be very consistent. Do your research. I got to double check that I put the CDC developmental stages, the correct ones, like the typical ones. And even in the next chapter, when we talk about gifted students, sometimes kids have their developmental stages are a little bit quicker, but sometimes, like the doctor said, like sometimes it shows up, and oh, my baby's a genius. You're like, well, yes, yes, yes. Parts of this child are so awesome. We got to get the other parts to catch up, right? A lot of interventions that we can do here. Okay. Let's see. Again, this breaks the areas of impairment down into social skills, communication skills, and behavior. Again, you're going to see this difficulty interacting with peers and adults. For our situation in my house, my child will walk up to any adult and start talking to them. And I have tried 100 times just to be like, well, not every adult, or, you shouldn't talk to every person. And then peers, him and his own peers, he doesn't really interact mostly with the peers in his class. He likes kids several years younger than him. And at 9, we still have a Nick Jr. backpack and a Nick Jr. lunch and a Nick Jr. You know what I'm saying? So there's a huge gap in what he goes to. It's either adults, and then it's like, I love you immediately, and then it's like kids that are like, I would say 4 years younger than him. He's 9, and there's like 5-year-olds that he prefers to play with, and 4-year-olds, and he's appropriate with them, but there's a distancing there. Communication, again, sometimes some kids are nonverbal. My kid is hyperverbal. But he's very pressured. He's into your face, and he like asks you 1,000 questions about like all these little details of everything that you should know, and he needs to know them, and he needs to know them right now. And you're like, but wait a minute, I'm cooking breakfast, right? You know, there's, and even the nonverbal communication. If I do this, what is my face saying right now? He goes, yeah, you have a question for me? So he can't really discern the difference between angry face and confused face, right? It's pretty interesting. I'm fascinated with this frustrating child I have, but love him to bits, right? Um, yeah, we have a lot of this repetitive, not unusual language. Sometimes they babble, but we're kind of here in our house. And then you're going to see sometimes rocking, spinning, hand flapping. We don't have a lot of that. We have a little bit here. But unusual responses to loud noise or other sensory stimuli. So kids, we'll talk about sensory processing too. When senses come in, when input comes into whether it's your eyes or your nose or your smell or your taste or your hearing, everything, sometimes kids don't react like a typical child. Sometimes they overreact, right? So for example, if a car backfired on your street, you might jump, right? A kid who under registers sensory won't even flinch. They're just like doing their own thing, and they're, in their own little task. Kids who over register, they'll be like, "Oh my God, that was the loudest noise I've ever heard," right? So I have examples in here of what it's like. So it's really, really interesting how the brain processes the same information as a different brain, but processes it differently. I'm just ultimately fascinated. I like this graphic too. This talks about how some kids are skilled in non-social domains, meaning there might be a kid who's great at the piano or building things. My kid can like take stuff apart. I mean, literally, like he took a play structure apart. He can take little cars apart. He can build them. It's fantastic. But again, the peer is down here. They sometimes their eye contact is off. Sometimes they're not responding because they're kind of in that own little world. And when it comes to communication, they're going to have unusual or repetitive language. Again, he went through this whole phase where he said tapatio about 1,000 times a day, or maybe 1,000 times an hour. Yeah, Tapatio, 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 tapatio. Yeah, right. It's not Tourette's. It has a stimulation to it. It calms their brain down. It gives them sensory input. It's really fascinating. Um, he can initiate a conversation. He cannot stay on task, and he cannot sustain a conversation. So he'll start one, but it's got to be about what he wants to say, right? He some will do make believe or pretend, but sometimes they're just stacking and lining things up, like over here. Let me get all the phones. Give me your old phones. You have an old phone, right? Or sometimes he'll cut pictures of cars out of magazines and put them in a photo album, like it's a photo album. You'll see hand flapping, rigid routines. We're okay with that here, but some kids cannot have a different routine. And then fascination with object parts. They'll stop and they'll just kind of tweak out on like one thing, like a light switch or something. In infants, again, poor eye contact. That's pretty much the first thing. They don't respond to their name. They're not pointing. They're more interested in objects, more interested in things than people. They don't imitate. They don't engage. They don't reciprocate. It's just kind of a kid who could be babbling and they could be up and giggling at stuff, but it's not at you. It's not at somebody else. It's sad. Now this child, he does have like a little helmet on. That could just mean that his little head had a little bump on it when he was born, but obviously he's doing well in that respect. But see how many times he actually looks up at the camera and how many times the mom calls his name. Oh, sorry about that. Let's get this in here. Good, he looked at her. Did you see the hands? It's not bad, but what's making him happy? If he's not really responding to mom, there's not a toy, there's a thing. He's just doing this because it makes him feel good. And so I wrote down approximately 11, 12 times that she said his name. Um, she also whistled at him about 5 times. She snapped a couple of times. He looked at her about 5 or 6 times. Didn't look at the camera, which is fine. Most kids are at this age are actually more fascinated with the camera. They're like staring at the camera. He just kind of was in his own little world, right? He didn't even try to approximate ma or even duh or offer her anything, right? He's just kind of in his own little world. So I read later in this video he was diagnosed with autism a few months later. But again, it could be a mild form. We don't know. I mean, it looks like a happy baby, right? He had some responses, and there's even a part where he got kind of sad. It could be that he had a gas bubble or something, but they have a lot of normal parts, right? So again, let's not overshoot it here. This is the one that I think is a little bit more indicative of a full scope here. This is a good one. Yeah, no, we're not doing dental implants. This is our typically developed child. It's very sweet. So how old do you think he is? About 3, maybe? Yeah, he's doing imaginative play. He's doing a little bit role play. He's doing imitative play, and very social. He goes up to a kind of a stranger, and that's cute though. That's good. That means that he sees his mom cooking, and he eats, and adults eat. Yeah, he kind of looks up at the camera. So nice. See how she's got her clipboard. She's taking data. So cute. And look at him. He's actually using like a knife and fork almost appropriately, one in each hand. And this is why it's good to know the typical developmental stages. It's not a test. This is like an illustration, so you guys can see what's really going on here. She's right next to him, and he walks right by her. Children can't be addicted to things. Sorry. That means that he receives pleasure or stimulation from it in a good way for his brain. After the second time, then does not respond. If he loves it that much, he'll be like, don't you want to play too? Yeah. He's like, well, wait a minute. There we go. He's enjoying the sensory from the tickle, but not, and hasn't dropped the phone either. So, I mean, again, it's subtle, and every kid likes a phone. Who doesn't, right? But just know that, I mean, I don't want to say that was severe, moderate, or mild. That's not what a typical child does at that age, right? So again, I know in our program here we talk about constructivist play, and Vygotskian play is our work, and work is our play, and creative play. Some kids cannot play the same. That's why I am here. That's why I want to bring more of this alternative model, or this alternative brain to this theoretically pure child environment of, oh, kids play, they learn through play. Yes, they do, but some kids they don't have the same brain structure in order to play. So again, I want to make sure that everybody knows that when we learn about Vygotsky and Erickson and things like that, those are basically based on a typically developed child. So we have to really be aware of other things going on, and not just have everything fit one type of kid. Again, facts about autism. You may think you know what autism looks like. In fact, though, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Some people with autism are chatty. Others are silent. Many have sensory issues, gastrointestinal problems, just like tummy, sleep difficulties, and other medical problems. Others may have social communication delays, and that's all. And that's it. So again, you can't predict, you can't, that's why we call it a spectrum, because there's different things going on, right? So again, what do I have here? I thought this was cute. The spectrum is strong with this one. And the one who's got his helmet off, and the one, right? And maybe the guy in the last Star Wars movie, I forgot what his name, Flynn? He was just, he had like a moral issue, and, he stepped outside of the role, but maybe he was a little twitchy, right? And he just couldn't be in a suit. He had some sensory issues. Maybe that'd be hilarious to wonder if they wrote that in for the character. Okay. Now, impact. So obviously, when a child has these challenges or these challenging areas, it makes an impact. It affects them, right? But guess what? It also affects the world around them. And again, I can tell you from personal experience, it's a challenge, right? And you probably even read it through my, half the time I'm telling you, I'm giggling, right? But at the same time you see it, I'm like, tired and trying to explain it and fascinated, and I love my child, but there's a lot to deal with, right? A lot to deal with. There's a lot of impact. Different families deal with it differently. Different people within the same family deal with it differently. I've had family members ask me, well, what's wrong with him? And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with him. He's got, he has ASD, he's on the spectrum, he's got ADHD, he was, probably drug exposed. However, he's really great at this, this, and that, and he's doing better this year because he has this, this, and that, right? That kind of situation, right? And I see how if a child was in a wheelchair, people are a lot more amenable or more empathetic. But at the same time, that's not exactly what we need here, right? Um, let's look at all these different things here. Again, the different impact is different because I tell you, some kids are super social. Some kids can't be around others. Some can't handle the sensory. I know for us, we went to a soccer clinic because I thought maybe he liked to do soccer, run around and get some energy out. He put the soccer ball up his shirt and ran around barking the whole time. Yeah, I was like, okay. So how do you think that works in a family situation? We can't put him in group sports. He can't handle that. He's not flexible, things like that. Individual sports, like we tried karate and things like that, but the gi is too stiff for him. It's this whole, it's just every little thing that you think you can do with your child, you might not be able to do. It's really funky. So echolalia is this lovely part of it where they just repeat and that stuff. Now, here's the thing. There's a speech pattern, but also I want to let you guys know that they hear something and they repeat it. So adults say things and then they'll repeat them because they just do. And either they've learned it or it feels good to their brain in some way. So the example that you're going to see is not a kid who's barking or, repeating the same thing, but this kid is verbal. He's moving around the session, and the therapist is really trying to guide this child on just making basic choices. And it's really a test about the echolalia. The key here is that whatever the therapist says last is what the child repeats. And we'll see that. It's pretty interesting. Oh, every time I do that, I need to do the little guy right here. This one. So did you see that? That happened 6 times. That's bad. The child, he just hears, it's the last thing he hears and just repeats it. And that's just how their brain works. It's not good or bad, it just is. Okay? Now, stereotypies, again, you're going to see it's called it's non-productive behaviors, it's manneristic behaviors, it's repetitive behaviors, right? And it looks different in different kids. I've seen hand flapping, I've seen twirlies, I've seen back and forth, and what they're doing is like you can see right now how the light breaks in front of my eyes. This is like maybe like fireworks to them. It's just so visually stimulating. I had a child who every time he was in the car and other cars were going by, he would just get so excited. I saw a kid at school the other day who was looking up at the clouds. It was one of those like half rainy days, and he was just like, just like so excited. And it just means that it's producing an input to the brain. It's like uploading the best software ever. It's really cool. So here's some different examples. Yeah, he's just like, oh, I'm excited. Obviously sounds like it's coming from a mom, right? He's probably about 4 or 5 there. Yeah, that's pretty consistent. That's didn't show up just once in a minute or once in an hour. He's either watching water or he's in a mirror watching it or bubbles or something. Something that's making him happy, and yeah, that's I wouldn't say severe, but that's up there. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, that's like an 8, right? And again, it's non-productive. He's not doing anything with it. He touched his neck. It's not that his hands don't work. He's using his hands, and then all of a sudden, something makes him happy, and he just kind of has a little moment. Now, I've worked with families like this, with children like this, and the girl would go, la, 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 she'd make some little sound, la, 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 la. They wouldn't take her out of the house unless it was just for school. The mom's like, oh, I miss going to Target. I haven't been to Target in 3 years. I was like, oh, no. Yeah, she can go to Target. This child is not the most peculiar, or she's not going to hurt anything or hurt herself. So again, it's non-productive. It means it really doesn't serve a purpose to us. Oh my goodness. But it serves a purpose to them. Okay. I was just trying to click off that ad. Urgh. It doesn't have to make sense to you. Respect that it makes sense to them. Yeah. And by the way, I've had kids who do this, which is great. Fine. But they have to be in a certain order. They have a color order. They have like, maybe that's Donatello and it's D, and then D has to go before L, which is Lucy. Like, it's all that kind of stuff. Sometimes they're very rigid in this play. And so you have to be respectful, but at the same time, you can, depending on the needs, it's like you can just maybe move one and see if you have the full blow up and work with the blow up, right? And then learn coping skills. So again, you you don't always want to poke the bear, but again, depending on what the needs of that child are, maybe a little bit of poking the bear is okay. But again, the goal is to get them into a better functional place. And we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. I don't mean to be mean. I'm not being mean. But again, learning a new skill or learning to be flexible takes practice. Okay. Now, family impact. In regards to friendships and social network, only 5% reported that ASD has a very positive effect on their social network. Well, that's awesome. They probably have a very supportive ASD community. 44% said somewhat negative, and then very negative, meaning I don't want to let my child out, nobody talks to them, they're bullied constantly, that kind of situation. So I would agree with this for us in our family. I wouldn't say no impact, but at first, we didn't have a whole lot of impact, but now that he's getting older, less invites to birthday parties and friend things and, that kind of stuff, and he can't really handle a scout at camp, and it's really kind of interesting how how the impact is and how it changes or evolves over time. So again, every family is different. Okay. I thought this was kind of cute. You might be an autism parent if your kid can name all 63 moons of Jupiter, but can't tell you what they want for lunch. My child can tell you like engine production size on Mustangs, I think from 63 forward, Porsches since the 911 model came out in the 70s. He can tell you um, like the cubic centimeters of an engine. He could tell you the cylinders. He can point something out and say, oh, that's a 6 cylinder, that's a Hemi, that's an 8 cylinder, that's a 12, that's a V8, that's a straight 8. It's a little it's a little obsessive. Yesterday, in fact, one of his teachers caught him going, Mommy, look at that Porsche. It's a Cayman. Do you know it has 450 brake horsepower? And I was like, buddy, I don't want to listen to that right now. I want to get you to class. And the teacher starts giggling. And I was like, every morning, it's something along those lines. Yeah. All these other moms are talking about honor roll, dance recital, softball games, gymnastic meets, and I'm sitting here like, woo, she tried to do food and her socks didn't bother her. Not kidding, right? Mine is more like we went to school with the shirt inside out. I was like, dude, he's like, I like it this way. I was like, no. He's like, well, I'm going to feel the tag. And I was like, well, I'll cut out the tag. I mean, it's just like this, it's a constant, like what's going to set him off situation. Now this right now, I wanted to show you what, not the cute side, but a little bit more severe and a little bit more illustrative. Okay, some students or children hit themselves. I've had children hit themselves here, scratch their arms, bang their head on the wall, bang their head on the floor. I've had a child detach his retina by banging his head, meaning his eyes. He like messed up his eyes. I've had, you guys see here, I have a ceiling fan going. I've had students, every time she saw a ceiling fan, she would jump and pull it off the ceiling. I'm not kidding. Spitting, biting, hitting, pulling, clothes, everything. You name it, I've seen it. I've gotten punched, kicked, bit, spit, everything. Everything. So just know that they can do self-injury. They also can lash out aggressively. Okay. And you may have even seen this video. This was something that kind of went around the internet, and it was like a 2020 thing, but it really kind of shows the full scope. Mm-hmm. This is considered severe. So she was trying to communicate. Mm-hmm. First this, then that. Yep. And that's how you teach it. Sorry. Mm-hmm. So awesome. Fantastic. That's nothing. Yeah. Heartbreaking. It's amazing. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. 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 She makes these noises. She's being silly. Aw. All of them. That's hard. It's got her little sassy shirt on. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Now she has a talk show. So amazing. Not kidding. She has a talk show and she's got a YouTube channel, the whole thing. There's a ton of stuff. She also created a PSA and she's writing a book with her dad. I'm going to show you the PSA in a little bit, but first to the talk show, shall we? Channing Tatum, episode 1. She has a severe, fierce sense of humor. Wait for it. Do we have to get it? Oh no, this is her intro. I thought it was a commercial. I was like, no. Mm. Oh, oh. She's really giving it to him. This is hilarious. All right, so we have like a pretty good idea here. She has a lot of ideas. I think she preloaded some of these talking points. I think that's fantastic. That kind of looks like maybe her own apartment back there too, right? No frills, a lot of tech, fantastic. She has a lot of different guests, so it's really kind of cool to see that she wanted to make it happen just like the other video that we saw, the TED Talk. She's like, I have an idea, I'm going to make it happen, I'm going to get to it. Guess what? That's about right. So I really thought that was really cute. Now, at the other end of the spectrum are the ones who are like super, super, super smart, like the Rain Man, right? Who has like, has a rigidity and can like count a deck of cards if it hits the deck, right? Like that kind of situation. I really like how the book talks about Stephen Wiltshire, and I didn't use the video that it was New York City. I used the one that where he recreates Mexico City. Oh, I did it again. Like, get in here. This is really cool. They said he did New York City after 20-minute helicopter ride. Look at that. He's so cool. Like, well, it's a fact. I don't have to be weird about it. He's so cool. I mean, honestly, go on his website. I think he's got a Facebook page or a YouTube channel. Yeah, YouTube channel. So many different cities. It's chill worthy. And then you can hear his sister talking about him. She's kind of like his chaperone or whatever. She's like, well, he's got some, deficits in some other ways, but he's got this particular skill. There are also other savants in the world who, there's people who are really good with numbers. Some people are good with memorizing dates, things like that. So he's not the only one, but there's a lot out there. You can do a term. You can do a search term on that. Now, if we look at autism in the context of our society, let's look at the people and situations, right? We're going to learn a little bit about Temple Grandin if you haven't heard about her yet. She's kind of like Carly is kind of like for younger people, and Temple Grandin's kind of like the spokesperson because she's kind of older, and it was kind of one of the first people to really get out there. And yeah, it's a fascinating story. Let's see. What's it like to have ASD? Now, I really like it when people describe what's going on in their brain and they can kind of sort of so we can kind of understand what's going on. This is the PSA that look at, I'm going down here this time. This is the PSA, the public service announcement that her and her dad put together. So great. So you'll see a guy acting like her dad and a person acting like her sister. They're just actors. And then you see Carly at the end. So she was about 14. Let's see if it loads. So cool. No. And this is supposed to be Toronto. This is the sensory overload. She's she's hearing everything, reading her sister's face, feeling that people are staring at her. Yeah. And she also can't, up to that point, she couldn't really say how she could be helped. Remember what it was like to be 14 and everything was weird and awkward? And then you have this? It's just heartbreaking. So just because a child can't speak doesn't mean they don't have anything going on in there. In fact, they may have too much going on in there, and that's why they're acting like that. So again, a lot of stuff going on. It is not a disease. Don't try to cure them. Just try to understand. And it's hard because we aren't there. Like she said to her dad, I wish you could be in my brain for 5 minutes, you know. And it's hard because it is this hard. This I thought was really cool. This was a little bit more, this is like a robot talking a little bit, but this might this might describe it a little bit differently too, and I really liked how it does describe it here. My son has complained about that to me. Even in our classroom, he'll come in and be like, "Why is that? What is that?" Yep, that's what it sounds like to him all the time. And that's when he starts barking really loudly. They're that sensitive on their skin. Mm. He's gonna munch it. Yep. Yeah, it's just too much to balance. Hmm. He will constantly ask me if it's a an idiom or a colloquialism. He knows those two words, but he doesn't know. Yeah. Yeah. Go to the website. It's really kind of cool. It really helps, but at the same time, there's a lot there. What else? Okay. All right, we talk about Temple Grandin. Like, what's it like? I think I did this out of order. Hold on. Okay. I'll have you go through, sorry, famous people. There's, you guys can go ahead and watch that one. We can just, for time. That's the one that we saw, famous people. And this is cool because I like this guy. He has a really great description. Mm-hmm. You guys can check it out. It's autismexperts.com. This right here, again, this is the meat and the potatoes of this entire chapter. Um, I am going to announce extra credit that you guys can watch the full movie. This is Temple Grandin, and they had a full movie. It's fantastic. I do have the link to that if you guys need it as well. I will post that and actually a little bit extra credit just in case. I don't think anybody needs it, right? But I really want you to watch the full movie. This is her TED Talk. We won't watch the whole thing. This will just give us an idea of who she is. And then when you watch the movie, you'll see how well the actress did. There's They're just rolling around in her head. Thanks, no. Pretty cool. Yeah, right. This is huge. I want you guys to see this. So even look at her brain is even a little bit bigger, but this means that from the eyes to the brain, this is called the visual cortex or the prefrontal visual cortex, and it really, she's thinking in pictures. It is fired up because of her brain is there. It uses her eyes, but even if her eyes are closed and she's remembering things, it adds a visual component to it. So fantastic. So this is what's going on in the brain of kids who maybe are even ADHD and think in pictures. So again, there's a lot of different things that we need to keep in mind as we're working with these kids. But again, I'm going to stop that video right there, but there's more that you can see. She does several different TED Talks, and she's got her own YouTube channel. She's got a bunch of different things here. But I want you to let you know a child with autism is not ignoring you. They're waiting for you to enter their world, right? So again, the Temple Grandin movie is fantastic because it really shows the struggle that her mom couldn't connect with her, how she was in her own little world, how she, the doctor was like, well, she needs to be institutionalized, and how she was as a kid, how she was as a young person, and what really fascinated her, what made her happy, what made her calm. It was just a great, great movie. So I want to make sure you guys see that as well. So where did it come from? Is it new? No, it's been around, but I guess in the 40s is when they really kind of like coined the phrase. I really like how this video kind of talks about a little bit of the history, and we'll see how far we get through this as well. Picture from the book. 1960s. right? Basically what they're saying is that the research grew, the information grew, society changed a little bit. Yeah, no more shock treatment, right? It's going to show up no matter what. Okay, now, good, good. Remember in the 80s, these students weren't allowed in typical schools still. I didn't see any when I was growing up. Isn't that cool? Yeah. April 2nd, you'll see these things like light it up blue, that kind of thing. Yeah, pretty much that. And again, making sure that the students are in the least restrictive environment in a typical classroom. Yeah, it's not just one thing. And when you have a spectrum, it gets a lot. Let's see how much we're going here. All right, I think, hold on. Oh, we don't need to see references. Okay, but here's the deal. Keep in mind, it seems that for success in science or art, a dash of autism is required. So let's look at it as maybe a benefit, and it can be in a lot of ways. And Albert Einstein said, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So let's change the goal. Let's change the outcome, right? Instead of getting mad at the fish, right? Again, I put this one in here because this is the DSM-4. They used to say autistic separate, Asperger separate, childhood disintegrative disorder, Rhett's disorder, PDD, NOS. We don't say those things anymore. So you're going to see autism, typical autism, autism needing supports, Asperger's syndrome. You're not going to see a disorder, right? And again, these certain things we're not going to do a lot of focus on there, but this is kind of what they said. They called it schizophrenia or disintegrative disorder, which is so sad. Rett syndrome, it kind of looks like Fragile X, but it's only in girls. It does have a genetic marker, and PDD, NOS, you're not going to see that. It was almost like, well, we couldn't figure out, so we put NOS, not otherwise specified. That means they don't know what was going on, but now we put it in a spectrum. Okay. Again, just as a reminder. Okay. Very good. All right. And the prevalence. Now, she said it was 1 in 168, 1 in 188. Again, there's a reason these things have changed. Okay, when you put a label on something, the category fills up. That's how it works. And then also when you make a spectrum, it includes a lot of people in the category. So it's actually more specific. It's 1 in 68. Now, the number has been leveling off. It's not going to be like 1 in 48 and 1 in 28 and 1 in 8. It's not going to be like that. It's just not going to be that way. Trust me. Again, and when the definitions change, let's say they add in sensory processing disorder. Well, maybe some of the kids who are 1 in 68 can go over to sensory processing disorder, and then this becomes 1 in 100 again. Again, so let's not freak out. It's just a diagnosis for now, or just a label, but it doesn't mean that the supports need to change. Just look at what the child needs and help the child with what the child needs. Okay. Now, just to compare the other categories, remember we talked about learning disabilities, more boys. OHI, this is where the ADHD is, right? Remember, and we also said that some girls are underdiagnosed. Speech and language, boys. Cognitive disabilities, autism. That's a big jump, okay? Let's see. Give it a sec. Boys are nearly 5 times more likely to be autistic than girls. Yeah. So that number that's 1 in 68, it's 5 times higher for boys. Okay. And then what did I put this one? By category, by category, by category. Did I put the exact same one in there? I certainly did. I have a different one, so I'll have to add that in later. It was something a little bit different, but I will add that in later. Interesting. Now, there are different ways to help students through this. And I am an EBA supervisor. This is something that I live and love. And again, it's a little bit different than our behavioral, than our constructivist roots of Vygotsky and things like that. So, but again, kids with autism or on autism spectrum, they need a little bit of behavior modification. Just help their therapist with, I mean, you can get hired at a local agency with maybe a couple child development classes, and you make maybe $15 to $20 an hour working in a kid's home, and I'll show you an example. Okay. This is what is ABA. It's nice. This is what a session looks like. In this segment, Daniel's encouraged to verbally ask for the things he needs. Sometimes you have to withhold stuff so they actually use their words. If you say bird, say bird, say bird. No, right? She's prompting him. That's a little gift for him. He loves it. Look at his eyes. He's enjoying himself, right? So she's getting him kind of connected to her. And notice how he didn't respond to the tickle. He just wanted the thing. But that was good language. He pointed and wanted the teddy. And he listened to her when she said kiss. So he's compliant. She's keeping his... See? She's getting him to talk. She's not prompting everything. She's just waiting. So consistent level of positive reinforcement. Got one. See how he's using his language, right? So the ABC analysis is another way of looking at behaviors. First, there's an antecedent, then a behavior and a consequence, right? So basically, for him, she set up a partially set up game, right? The antecedent, and she's like, oh, we need more pieces. The behavior was his talking, right? And the consequences was he got what he wanted and they could play the game. So ABC could be something positive. ABC could also be something, um, the store ran out of the child's favorite, whatever, ice cream. That that was the antecedent. The child had a behavior, had a big temper tantrum in the ice cream shop, and the consequence was they had to leave, right? So there's ABC is really it works for everybody, right? Not just kids on the spectrum. Again, antecedent, what comes before behavior, the actual behavior. Like for example, like the other day I went to the movies and I had a big bucket of popcorn and then the antecedent was there was popcorn. It smelled so good, so I got some. The behavior was I ate it. The consequence was I was like thirsty and I like popcorn stuck in my teeth and I felt like I overdid it. Right? So everybody has ABCs in their world, right? But again, when we look at consequences and we look at the behavior and those two things wrapped together, sometimes we can also figure out the function of that behavior. There's only four major functions of behavior: sensory, escape, attention, or access to tangibles, right? So again, sensory could be this, it could be a tickle, it could be anything. Escape is I'm out of here. Attention is look at me, right? And tangibles is getting something, right? So again, when we figure out the reason for the behavior, maybe the escape tells us that there's something, you know, something that's going on, like Carly had pain in her body. So again, what is that? Or sensory, they're making the noises because it feels good to them. Or tangibles, they had a big temper tantrum at Target because they wanted a toy. So if we figure that out, then we can kind of block that, shape that, change that, you know, look at what we can do to give alternative choices and alternative, so we have alternative behaviors, right? And here's a kind of an inside joke. What's the function? Right? So if you're already working with kids or an ABA therapist, as some of you are, it's kind of funny. Okay. What my friends think I do, just walk around with Rain Man. What my parents think I do, what parents think I do, oh, you're an angel. What society thinks I do, works with kids with different devices. What Hollywood thinks I do, some weird science and talking to people about it. What public schools think I do, oh, do we just play all day? And what I actually do, I have therapy sessions and it depends on the child's need. Okay. Yeah, I really am a big fan of ABA. If you want to reach out and ask me more about that, I can answer more questions. Now, Teach is an actual program that came out of UCLA and Lobos. But again, working together with teachers and parents is like, we need to really look at their goals. Like, what does this child need? Like, again, my child can talk and he can do math, but he needs to write the letters a little bit better and he needs to have better conversations with people. So we call it pragmatics and slowing down and taking their time. Okay. Structured teaching is a way to actually help. Again, you saw some of that structured teaching in ABA. And discrete trials is actually placing a demand, getting the response, the proper response, maybe helping prompt the response, and closing the loop. And so I'll show you a video on that right here. It's really interesting. I'm only going to show you part of it, but it's good. Slightly. That's a 2-command action. So that's like the reward. He gets to play with that. Get her attention. Good. Good matching. She was already kind of going for it. Too many words. eh, they might not know what find means, so we got to keep it real simple. Good job, Betty. So she prompted him. He wasn't really watching, but do that enough times, he'll do it on his own. She gave a little bit of, yeah. She's copying. It's really good copies. She, she might have a little echolalia in there too. So, so this is what I was saying when I do this. Now, again, pretend there's a whole circle here. You can watch the rest of the video. Basically, the SD is the discriminative stimulus, basically the command. And then you look for a response. If they don't do it, you prompt them, meaning like you can hand them or point or give them some cues. Then they perform and then they close it. So you have to close the loop every time. And it's a weird way of thinking of behavior, but at the same time, it's like a light switch on the wall. You know, when you flip it up, you're making a connection. You have to close that loop of the wires in the back. And when it's down, the wires are separated, right? So again, if you look at behaviors as us closing the loop, then you're going to have more control over that child, no matter what their skill set is. And what happens is that parents, they kind of give a half a command. They don't wait for that child to actually do it. And then the child kind of trails off. Well, guess what? If you're not closing the loop, the child's not going to be compliant. Then you can't get mad at them for not doing what you've asked. Oh, so maybe parents should not prompt if they're not ready to follow through. Now, the Young Autism Program, again, this came through UCLA and Lovas. It is just a way, it's one of the techniques that is used. I'm going to kind of skip ahead on this one. And the pyramid approach. I really like this because it looks at all kind of different areas here. The why of behavior and learning, the how of teaching, like a teaching strategies, effective lessons and things like that, the what of teaching, right? And so again, this is another way of looking at it, but ABA can be used in all of those things. Now, PECS is a great one. Picture Exchange Communication System. It is a very specific, it's not just a bunch of little images, but at the same time, it's a part of our alternative communication model. And there's a huge training for PECS, and you can use it in its own way, but to be trained is best. And it's really kind of cool because it's for kids who are not verbal. It really helps them exchange information through pictures. It's almost like learning visual language. Good ones. It doesn't have to be candy. It can be toys. It can be tickles. Yep. Mm-hmm. Could could it be 5 minutes on the tablet? Isn't that cool? You can buy these materials or print them out or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, trust me, I have binders and binders of this stuff. It helps. Yeah. Right, so when they hold the picture, it's still soft on the back. That's so cool. So easy. Yep. You can make your own too. Okay, great. Oh, wow. Have we seen that graphic before? Isn't that cool? It helps teach a child how to pick something up and hand it. And they exchange it. Look, picture, exchange, communication. Look, kid already got it. Good job, Betty. Oh gosh, we don't need the music. We don't need the music. But here's what they say, like the person behind just helps the child actually learn how to grab it and pick it up. Because if you say to a child, pick it up, and they already have a processing disorder, they're not going to even understand the content of that command. Pick it up, they don't know. Okay. So let's see what we have left. Oh, we just have future technology. This is great. Okay. There's a lot of different technology that's out there, and I want to make sure that we know that not everything works and fits. This is actually a screenshot of Autism Speaks, the website from the book. Autism Speaks list of apps. Oh, by the way, you can filter it on what it does, and there's how many pages? 9 different pages. Look at this. All these. There's so many, I can't even tell you. I have experience with LampWorks, Proloquo, a bunch of different fun little apps. I'm gonna skip over this one only because it talks about the first like tech. Um, it's like a autism tech conference, but again, it's just illustrating that technology is going to be great for these types of kids. Not every kid can. I have worked with kids who are their IQ is very, very low, their functioning is very, very low, and they cannot even use a tablet. They don't like watching TV because they don't understand it. They don't like touching a tablet. It doesn't do anything for them. So it doesn't, but I think this is funny. Your 1 million YouTube hits are from one autistic kid, child with autism, right? Because sometimes they really love something and they watch it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. Again, technology is going to be there. Just use the one that works best. Okay, this is a big deal. People think that vaccines cause autism. Look at autism's going up, even though thimerosal from the vaccines was taken out or people stopped vaccinating. Again, the debate is over. It was the medical community, scientific research, people with autism, the autistic community does not agree. I want you to learn about this. Mhm. Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. Or even more now. Mm-hmm. And I understand that people want to blame something, but listen to how. Boom. So don't let anybody convince you. Now she talks a little bit more about some theories and some guesses. And I just wanted you guys to see the part about the vaccines because that line aligns up with our book. And you can watch the rest of that, and it's really good. She talks about older males, and there's again some genetic links, but not genetic markers like Down syndrome. But it's really interesting because it can happen to anybody at any time. Okay. So the summary is the summary. I'm going to actually cruise through that real quick. We talked about what it is, what it does, what's the impact, what's the future perspectives, okay? And this week, no Iris, just answer these two questions in the discussion board. What do you think is the hardest part of a child's life with autism, or how can a child with autism overcome these challenges? Just want to see where you guys are at with that. And in the journal, just respond to one question. If you could guess why autism was created in humans, what would your guess be? I want to see where you philosophically are. Now, I put these in here as well, and I want to make sure that you guys see these different resources that I put in the book. The Autism Internet modules will have ABA. We'll show you everything that you need to know about ABA and more. Again, there's regulations, special ed website, actual college for persons with autism. Hi. It's in conjunction with Irvine Valley College, so it's local. It's not something back east. So check out lifecollegeoc.org. I actually teach down there at the place where they hold classes. I'm going to go in there and see if I could maybe apply. That'd be kind of cool. Family Autism Network, really cool resources as well. Those are all the videos that I put in. And I didn't put agencies, organizations, or journals. I actually just put them up in that thing you saw before. So lots of stuff that we went in there for. I will do an announcement for extra credit to watch the Temple Grandin movie. I do have a link to it on, I think, ABC Movies or 123 Movies or something like that, unless you have HBO or you've seen it before. Yeah, but again, big fan of ASD and everything that we can do to help. It will show up in your classroom no matter if you're an early childhood educator going to K-12, want to be a therapist, nurse, doctor, anything. It's going to show up. You're going to see adults with it and kids with it. So we have a moral obligation to be able to help people with this as well. So again, I want to say awesome job. Keep up the good work. We have one more chapter for this unit. Then we're going to have an exam. And then we have 3 more chapters and then the semester's over. It's crazy. Okay. So great job, you guys. Keep up the great work and I will see you in the virtual world.